Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Amber Schenck of Prolift Toyota, and you're listening to the New Warehouse podcast. Today's safety tip is to always be aware of your surroundings when in a warehouse.
Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And today's episode is our latest in the partnership with Material Handling Wholesaler Magazine, and this is focused on the Salute to Women in the Material Handling Industry, which is an annual issue that Material Handling Wholesaler Magazine does. You can find out more information at mhwmag.com and read the cover story there with both our guests featured in there. I'm going to be joined by Shari Altergott. She is the Chief Experience Officer at the CX Edge, and also Amber Schenck, and she is the Field Service Supervisor for Prolift Toyota. So we're going to talk a little bit about a current state of women in material handling, how things have kind of evolved over the years, and some of the challenges that we're still facing to kind of get that equality within our industry, which is very much needed, I believe. So Shari and Amber, welcome to the show. How are the both of you?
Great. So happy to be here. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yes, happy to have you both on. So let's get a little background on the both of you first, so we understand, your experience in the material handling industry and what you're currently doing. So Shari, why don't you start? Give us a little overview of kind of your career and where you're at now.
Sure. Well, first, thanks, Kevin, for having me. I've been a long-time listener, but first-time guest, so it's exciting to be a part of this. And thank you for doing this for the industry. I think the more information we can put out there, the better it is for everybody. So thank you. I'll give you a brief history. This year actually marks my 20th year in material handling. Okay. I started when I was 15. I wish I was only 15. I was a little bit older than that. But honestly, when I started, I was finishing up my bachelor's degree. I was doing school at night and the weekends. I was working a retail job. And I needed to get an office job to eventually get a real job once I graduated. I went to a temp agency. They set me up with a company that they called a material handling company outside Chicago. Okay. And I remember going on the interview thinking, what is material handling? And I remember leaving the interview thinking, what is material handling? Even throughout the interview. I mean, I started thinking, and you have to remember, this is before people were really using Google and there's a lot of information readily available. I started thinking, like, is this a waste management company? I don't know. I had no idea. So I'm like, they ended up giving me the job. My official title was office helper. And basically it was the person that just did all this stuff that nobody else wanted to do. But for me, that was really good opportunity because I got to learn a lot of different things. And in my head, I'm just thinking all of these are resume builders. I'm only going to be here for a year or two. Cut to 18 years later, I ended up leaving that company as vice president of customer experience. So I had been there for 18 years, worked myself up from the bottom to the top, essentially. And 2019 rolled around, and I just was in a point in my life that I had always wanted to start my own company. My background is sales, marketing, business development. And for me, it just felt like the right time. Now, I didn't know there was an impending pandemic that would happen only a few months later after I decided to quit my job and start my own company. Wow. But it's been a great experience. So I started the CX Edge in October of 2019. The CX Edge is a company that's geared specifically towards the material handling industry. Okay. And we cover the 4 components of the customer experience. So people, product, process, and feedback. And we offer solutions in each one of those 4 areas. There are other companies out there that do similar things that I do, but there isn't any that focus specifically on material handling. So for me, I felt that I could meld my 2 worlds together, my passion for material handling and the supply chain, but also my background in sales, marketing, and business development. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years, and it's been a tremendous experience that I'm really grateful for.
Wow, that's great. I love that you just started out the office helper, and now you're worked your way up to the top, and now you're the CEO, but Chief Experience Officer, right? Which is the key word there, I think, when you're focusing on that. So I'm curious, when you look at the customer experience side from material handling perspective, can you give us a couple examples of what you're doing there, or maybe some projects you worked on?
Yeah, so I've always looked at one of marketing's roles is to make complicated things easy to understand. And I think in today's environment, we talk a lot about the customer experience, but when you ask somebody to really define what that is, it's hard for them to really come up with an explanation. So I've tried to develop the company in a way to make really clear, tangible things that companies can implement to improve the experience. Okay. So if you look at the people, I think everything starts with people, meaning the people that you hire. So we offer strategies in hiring the right people and recruitment. We offer strategies in employee engagement. We offer strategies in employee training, because all of those really factor into your ability to deliver a really great customer experience.
Absolutely.
When we look at product, those are all the things that are more traditional marketing. So how do people communicate with your business? How are they finding you online? Are they finding you online? How are you communicating with your customers, changes in your business? So we do everything from web development and design to content and thought leadership as well. In the process piece, I was fortunate enough to work for a company that I became TPS certified, which is really a production system and how to make processes more efficient. I became really passionate about that and found that to be the core issue of most customer experience problems is whatever that process is. In the material handling industry, what I've found is there's a lot of companies that started out as a really small, almost mom and pop type company, and through acquisitions and just organic growth have become much larger. But their processes and their technology are the same as they were, when they started out. Yeah. So that's led to not only employees being unhappy, but customers being unhappy. So I've helped companies really define those processes, streamline the processes, and adopt new technology to make it easier for everyone. And then the final piece, feedback. I think you can never improve if you don't have a way to measure it, and you can never improve if you're not getting feedback of what you could do better as well as what you're doing right. So I do customer focus groups. I do surveys for the customers. I do surveys for employees. I do a lot of market research for companies looking to launch new product, all gained from the perspective of providing feedback so they can use data to make the best decisions possible.
Very interesting. And it's interesting that you just kind of touched on all those subjects, because I got the question the other day, mentoring a student in the supply chain major, and he was asking about different aspects of supply chain, and one of the things I mentioned was customer experience, and he's like, "Oh, that's like customer service, right?" And I'm like, "No, it's totally different, right?" So you pretty much kind of laid it out there, all the different aspects, and it's really interesting the point you made there about how these like distribution material handling companies have started out like a small mom and pop, and through acquisitions they've gotten bigger, but with the acquisitions and the growth and things like that, their internal structure and feedback processes and everything you mentioned has not really grown. So it's really great that you're kind of filling that hole in the market and helping people out there. So thank you for coming on. Let's learn a little bit about Amber, and thank you for being a listener too. I didn't realize that portion. So that's great as well. So Amber, why don't you give us a little background on you, how your career, and kind of how you ended up where you're at now?
Man, it's not near as good of a story as Shari. I kind of fell into it. I actually went to college and have a degree in environmental engineering.
Okay.
And used that for a little bit. My husband's company moved us to Kentucky from Ohio. So I left my job in 2009, about the time that the economy was taking a tank.
Yeah.
So when we moved here, I struggled to get on anywhere with my degree and fell into the service industry with restaurant equipment.
Okay.
Started in dispatch and worked my way up through some small management and wanted more. I was looking for more growth, and Prolift kind of fell in my lap. It was still service oriented, much to Shari's point too. I had no idea what material handling was, but I knew service.
Yeah.
So I took a leap, ended up running their rental department first. I guess I've been with them 4.5 years now.
Okay.
Started in the rental department. So it let me learn a little bit about forklifts and how you know when you need that kind of equipment. And then moved into a little bit of transportation before FSS for field service supervising, with helping road technicians and being a support for them, ensuring they have what they need to take care of our customers and create that customer experience that Shari spoke of. So that's how I got where I am.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Not quite as mapped out as Shari, but
there were a lot of twists and turns. It sounded like a nice soundbite, but I can assure you there were a lot of valleys in those hills too.
Yep. I'm thankful for the time I've spent doing what I've done. You know, the different people always teach me things, and with being, managing people is sometimes difficult. Everybody's different, and now incorporating industrial equipment and customers experience, it's a lot to think about and be that support system for them. And I like it. It keeps me on my toes. I never know what a day is going to bring. And I love that.
Yeah. And I think that kind of rings true throughout the material handling industry. You don't really know what the day is going to bring. And there's so much moving all the time and so many things going on. And, especially now our industry is like booming and going crazy because of all the supply chain issues and everything. So it's safe to say at this point, I think you both know what material handling is, right? You've had established careers now.
I don't know if I've totally figured it out, but I've gotten a lot closer.
Well, it's ever evolving, right? So,
I see pieces of equipment all over it. I'm like, I wonder what that does. I wonder what they call that.
Yeah.
And my kids will laugh at me because you drive down the highway and there's construction and you see a boom lift or telehandler, and it's like, oh, I can drive one of those.
So, you both kind of experienced the industry now for several years. And when we look at the material handling industry, I mean, I think for a long time, it was very like male dominated, right? Which not necessarily fair in my opinion. And, I think over the years it certainly evolved. And I know, I run a warehouse during the day. I mean, probably 50% of my staff is driving forklifts, working in the warehouse, moving material around is female. And I think it's a great thing. And I think it's, great that now there's that acceptance and, we're able to just realize that if people can do the job, it doesn't really matter. Right. But I'm curious, over your time in your career, the article in the magazine is focusing on evolution a little bit. What have you seen from your perspectives of, how that kind of role for women in material handling has evolved, and how has that acceptance kind of increased, and, how has the boys game, whatever, been, shut down a little bit and decreased?
I mean, for me, I've seen tons of it, even just more so in the last couple of years than my first 2 years there with Toyota. My first year, I would say that it was safe to say I could go to the restroom and not lock the stall door, and I didn't have to worry about it. I think there were 2 women in the office for a very long time. Wow. For me, I feel like women are, I don't know, more bold, maybe is the right term. I told Shari before this, I'm terrible with terminology and right fitting words, but I feel like there's less stay-at-home moms, and inflation, people want to go out, and I don't feel like women are intimidated anymore by going into a place and it being male dominant. Yeah. I think women as a whole are learning to stand on their own and hold their head high, and with other women building them up to say, hey, you can do this. Let's do this together. We've got you. Like a safety in numbers almost.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to see it with, even women in our corporate office. So many more women have come into our corporate office, into management roles. I'm hopeful that right now I'm the only female FSS we have company-wide. But knowing that people see that we can do this job, just because I can't fix a forklift doesn't mean I can't help the people that fix them. And I think people are starting to see that if you give us an opportunity, like, we've got this.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I totally agree. In my experience, some of the ladies that drive the forklifts around for me, they're better than the guys. I would say sometimes in some of the position we want the ladies instead of the guys, because the guys, they just get stubborn. They don't want to hear that they're made a mistake and all that stuff. And the women, they just come in, they work, and they just go for it. I think it's a great thing, and I love to see the expansion of that and bringing more people in and more diversity as well. So Shari, how about your experience? How has it been?
Yeah, I certainly have a lot of similarities with Amber for sure. 20 years ago when I started, there's always been women in the industry, but all the women were in admin positions. So there was always women in accounting, the secretary or admin assistants were always women, receptionist was always a woman. So there were women in the company, but there weren't any women in sales. There weren't any women in service. There weren't any women in management. Now, cut to 20 years later, there was certainly some progress made, but it was like this, I remember we had hired our first woman salesperson, and it was a thing that people talked about, like, oh my God, I don't know. Is she going to do okay? Is she going to be able to deal with it? We had hired our first woman technician, and the same kind of conversations happen. Is she going to be able to lift the same amount of weight and things like that for some of those more physical jobs? But still, being at that company for 18 years, when I left, I was still the only woman in senior management. There were a few other women in mid-level management, but when I say a few, I'm talking like 3 or 4. And this was a company that employed over 500 people. So as much as we think that we've come so far, we still have a really long way to go, because when we can point to the 1 or 2 women that might have management positions, that's not good enough. It has to be to a point where you're not the outlier if you're the 1 or 2 woman manager. You're not the outlier if you're an only woman salesperson. You're not the outlier if you're the only woman FSS. So I've seen the improvement, and I think it's well intended, but I think there's a really long way to go. There was a few studies posted, and when it looks at the difference between men and women and how they apply for jobs and really how they attack their career, there are statistics that will point to men will typically apply for a job they want, even if they're not fully qualified for it. So let's just say there's 10 things on that list that are the requirements for the job. If a man reads that, he'll say, you know what, I checked like 6 of the boxes, so I'm going to go for it. Women, in a lot of cases, will read that, and if they don't check every single box, then automatically they feel they're not qualified for it, and they don't apply. And I think that's part of the disparity in getting more women into management positions, is recognizing that those can be sources of insecurity, recognizing the different ways people think, and pushing some of those women to maybe apply for those jobs that they don't necessarily feel they're 100% qualified for.
That's a pretty interesting statistic there, and a point, because, I guess I've seen this firsthand, but I guess I never put it together. And I'm actually now thinking about it, and some people that I've kind of mentored and stuff, some of the females, they've kind of been a little hesitant to apply for some jobs, when I encourage them, like, no, you got this. Like you do these things, and those two things, like, don't worry about it, go for it. And some of the males, like, I actually have to, like, talk them away from me. I'm like, no,
right.
you're not there yet. No, you're not there yet. So it's pretty interesting that you pointed that out. I guess I never thought about it in that aspect, but it's definitely something I think that needs to be made more aware and more awareness, because, like I said, I mean, for me, working with females or males, it's no different. If they can do the job, they can do the job. It doesn't matter to me. And, I think there's a lot of great female leaders as well that are out there, and they just need, the time to be kind of coached and developed, just like, a male counterpart would be as well, and give them those equal opportunities. And, I've had male and female managers, and both are as effective in the same aspect, and some, even more better and powerful, I think, as well. So it's really interesting. And I mean, it sucks, of course, to hear, that it's not where it should be. I mean, it should be much more improved, I believe. And I don't think it's really that great of a thing that, we can sit here and still say, it still needs to come very far. So I mean, what do you guys think are some of the issues that, we're still kind of facing that, like, we really need to tackle? I know you mentioned one in there about the, applying for these types of jobs and the kind of the confidence to do that. But what are some other things that you think maybe we're facing?
Shari, like, you got me thinking now, like, I guess the fact that we still have to look around and pinpoint the one woman that does sales and the one woman that does FSS. To me, that's still part of the problem. Like, not that there's only one, but the fact that we have to point that out. I don't care if my technicians or male or female, as long as they're out taking care of the customer and doing their job. And I guess for me, it's that we still talk about it, so it's still there. Like, I guess it subliminally or not being conscious. Sometimes I guess I feel like I have to work harder to prove that I can do this job, even though I can do this job. It doesn't matter that I'm a girl. So I don't know. I guess for me, it's the fact that we still talk about it. And as women, again, like, build each other up, encourage each other. I think women spend so much time tearing each other down for competition. Work together, build each other up. Like, we've got this.
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the strategies are long-term strategies. Some of it is just changing kind of the unconscious bias that exists not only in material handling, but in every company. And when you're looking at especially diversity and inclusion, it's not about, I would always get the comment, because this has been kind of a passion project of mine for a long time. And when you talk about diversity and inclusion, I would always get the comment of, Shari, look, we're not hiring, like, we can't just hire somebody because it's a woman and we need more women to work here. We're just hiring the best person for the job. And I agree with that. I mean, you need to hire the best person for the job, but you should also care if you're not diverse. When I started, again, a long time ago, you had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that it's typically white men. Or I think you said men, but it's typically white men, white middle-aged men. Yeah. And at the time, those were also the customers. So not only were the people that worked in material handling white middle-aged men, everyone they were selling to was white middle-aged men. So from a business perspective, it tended to make sense because they related with each other. They had a lot of same interests. People tend to relate better to people that look like them and act like them in some capacity. But cut to 20 years later, the buying demographics, so the buyers within the supply chain have increased their diversity at a much faster pace than the material handling industry has. And now what's that caused? So now the people we're selling to in the supply chain are more diverse. People that are at those tables are of different backgrounds and different genders. If the material handling industry doesn't catch up to that, they're going to lose business to the companies that are going to be able to do that. And from a woman perspective, if you can have a woman salesperson that's relating to a woman buyer, that can give you a competitive advantage. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we could have an 8-hour podcast of all the benefits of that. Yeah. But if you just want to look at the financial benefits of that from a company, the more diverse you are as a material handling company, the better it's going to enable you to create a better customer experience for those people you're selling to, and the easier it will be to attract diverse talent. Yeah. It is challenging for a company. Today in the labor market, the way it is, and especially around technicians, people are always talking about they have all these open positions. I know companies that literally have hundreds of open positions right now and can't fill them. And nobody's applying for them, because we haven't built up that pipeline of talent. If you're a woman, and they're like, sure, but we hire women. Yeah, but if I'm a woman and I want to work for your company and all I see at your company is white middle-aged men, I don't really buy the fact that you're all about diversity and inclusion because you haven't shown that. Yeah. I don't see that. And it's the whole additive that's kind of come out in the last few years. If I can see her, I can be her mentality. And you need to have that representation within the company for women to move up the ranks in a lot of cases.
Very interesting point. And, I think that the development, like you said, needs to be there as well. And it's interesting. I had a conversation earlier today, actually, even about the expectations of certain jobs from even the starting level of students coming out of school, expected to have all this experience when they literally just got out of school. So it's companies are not taking that time to really create the development programs, and they're looking for people that are already qualified in a sense from what they say, but they're not really the ones that are trying to invest the time in actually making sure that these people are qualified within their company for their needs. And I think you look inside the company, and then you look at more diverse hires based on personality and kind of what they're bringing to the table as a person, and then you develop those skills that they need to work within your company. I mean, I think it's pretty simple like that, but it needs to be said. And I'm happy you're talking here. Hopefully we're creating some awareness around this. We got to talk about it to tackle it, right? So very interesting stuff. And I think there's a lot of way to go, like you mentioned. And how do you think else maybe do you see on your side, Amber, how we can keep progressing?
So we at Prolift, we've started a Women Impact Network.
Okay.
To kind of talk about, what can we do to help empower women to want to move up? We're trying to create job shadowing opportunities so that, a female in admin maybe wants to switch over to service. Yeah. Well, maybe instead of Shari, we talk about that they don't apply because they don't think they qualify. Maybe you job shadow with that person for a day, and maybe you do qualify. We're trying to build awareness, but we're trying to empower. We're trying to empower the women that we do have, that we have growth opportunities within the company for them. Then you just create the awareness and you create the opportunities, and giving them the opportunity to see what they want to do and where they want to go, and know that they have avenues, and to know they have a support system to get them there.
And Amber, I think, especially in your role, and I'm just assuming, but I'm assuming you're managing all men.
One female. We have
out
one
of how many?
19.
So you have 19 men and one female? So, but I think you're such a great example of what companies should be doing, and kind of along the path of what you're saying. I think, it's mentorship and to me, and I've been a part of different mentor programs on both sides, being the mentor mentee. And especially when you talk about women, they always want to create these women mentor programs. And personally, I hate that. I think it's a terrible idea. I think you're limiting your scope of who you're talking to by creating women-only mentor programs. And I think in Amber's example, as being a woman that's effectively managing men, you also change the man's mindset of what it's like to work for a woman. I had, at one point, I had taken over a new department, and it was on a male department, and they were a little bit worried about working for me at first. And for no other reason than I think, they had a perception of who they thought I was and who I thought I wasn't. And I remember getting 6 months into it, and it had taken a while to kind of build a trust and relationship with them. And about 6 months into it, the leader of that department, we were just having kind of a touch-base conversation. How do you think things are going? How can I improve? And things like that. And he said, you're the first woman I've ever worked for, and I was not excited about working for you at first. I'm glad he put the "at first" there, because then it would have been a really awkward conversation. But he's like, you really have changed. He goes, I had a perception of just what a woman boss is like, and you've helped to just kind of change that for me. And it's honestly a concept that until then I had never thought about. Because for me, if I was to work for a man or a woman, I really wouldn't think the difference of, you know what I mean? I don't know that I have a perception of what it's like to work for a man versus a woman. But he had this very specific idea of what it was like to work for any woman. And I was shocked by that. And so, Amber, I think, especially being in the role, you have such a great opportunity, because I think it's our job not only to support women and push women up through the organization, but also to support men and change the perception of what it's like working for women, change their perception of what it's like reporting to a woman. And that still exists in this industry to a large degree.
Agree. Well, and yeah, I mean, I'm the only female FSS, and it took me a while to earn their trust, I guess maybe is the word, because I can't fix a forklift. So when I took it, they're like, how is she going to help me? She can't fix a forklift. How is she going to help me? But I mean, in the last 3 years as FSS, or 3.5 as an FSS, I think I've won the majority of them over. I probably still have a few out there, but I like to think that I'm winning most of them.
I root for you and getting them all, Amber, but I think I'm all about setting realistic expectations.
Yeah. I'm happy with the percentage I have. I'm sure I won't hit 100. Perfection isn't a thing that I think is attainable, but to at least have some level of respect.
Right? Always continuously improving, right? You can't be 100% all the time, right? All right. So, I mean, it's great to hear from both of you, and definitely, good to hear your experiences. I think, hopefully other people listening to this, they'll be able to take some stuff away from that and help us to, improve the industry overall as a whole, and create more awareness around that as well. So thank you both for coming on the show. Shari, if people want to find out more information about the CX Edge, how can they do that?
So you can go to our website. It's thecxedge.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at the CX Edge.
Okay. And Amber, how can people find out more information about Prolift Toyota?
ProliftToyota.com. They also have the LinkedIn page, Prolift Toyota, Facebook, Prolift Toyota.
All right. And we'll put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so listeners can find it easily and connect with the two of you as well if they want to talk to you about their experiences. So thanks so much for coming on, talking about this very important topic. And if people want to learn more information and read the article, they can go to mhwmag.com. So thank you once again, Shari and Amber, for coming on the show.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.